instead of a baby step, I just said, hey, let's just jump to the top. And so that's what I did.
That's Jermale Eddie, the founder of Malamiah Juice Bar, a juice bar that went straight from idea right to having a retail location in downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan, all without having any real money backing them. Now, we'll get into how Jermale actually made that happen, but I want to make note of something. This story is a bit different than others on this channel. This business went from hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue and is now at zero. They've closed up shop. And I talked with Jermale about all of it, the start, the peak, and the closing. So let's start at the beginning with how Jermale even thought of starting a juice bar. So the idea of Malamiah Juice Bar kind of culminates from a lot of experience, but also one key moment. So for some context, Jermale grew up in West Michigan and his stepmother had a huge produce garden. And they would take some of that produce and actually start selling them in the farmers markets in Chicagoland. And that might seem like a really natural linear pathway from going from selling produce at farmers markets to wanting to start a juice business, but that's not necessarily how it happened. It wasn't this linear path. Eventually, Jermale found himself studying to become a teacher at Grand Valley State University, and he ended up working in higher ed for a little bit with enrollments and also helped to plant a church in Texas. And those 2 points might seem like small ones, but we'll come back to them in just a little bit. Eventually, from Texas, he ended up finding himself back in West Michigan, and as Jermale put it, when he came back to West Michigan, it was 2013, and he had a job where he had no room for creativity. With that, he's feeling lethargic, really, and just not really wanting to be super engaged. But he and his wife were watching a documentary on Netflix about juicing. And the weird moment, as Jermale has put it, is that he and his wife, without even really talking about it, both came to the same conclusion that Jermale needed to start a juice bar. And there was two main ideas of why to start a juice bar. First was to help change the health disparities, specifically in the Black community, especially in West Michigan. And second, it would be an outlet for creativity for Jermale, something that he was really needing as he was not getting that in his professional life at that time. And as Jermale put it, he didn't think it would actually turn into starting a juice bar, but he still kind of kept going with it and just let's see what happens. And he was starting to draft a business plan and doing a lot of research of like what it would take to start a juice bar. And eventually a mentor of his came up to him and was like, Jermale, all you're doing is researching, refining, and researching, but not actually doing the thing. And that same mentor was just telling him, just get a table, go to the park, get a juicer, and just start selling juice even at a park. And Jermale was like, you know what? I don't even need to do that stage. What I'm going to do is actually sign a lease at the downtown market, because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So let me actually have Jermale explain how he got started at the downtown market.
We didn't have any money when we started this. When we went to the downtown market, there was another gentleman who had pitched a juice bar to the downtown market, and then we came along, and it was kind of like between us two. That individual had way more money and a reputable last name in terms of like some of the larger, family names in Grand Rapids and West Michigan. And, we kind of won out. Now, here's the thing. Again, did I mention we didn't have any money? That we had overdraft fees in our account? That we came back from that church plant in Texas to Grand Rapids, and the housing market was upside down. We were upside down on our mortgage, all that stuff. And I believe that I did a good job of making it seem like we had the money when talking to those at the downtown market and kind of walking the walk, talking the talk. I remember showing with a clipboard, work boots, hard hat, tape measure, just going through there, looking at the space they gave me. I can't read a tape measure. I'm like writing stuff out, and I'll probably write X's and O's, but I looked the part, and I knew that I could be successful, and I convinced them that I could be successful. And I had a business partner at the time who then, right before we were supposed to sign with the bank that gave us our first business loan, he dropped out. He said he don't want to do it no more. They had to renegotiate the terms, and honestly, they didn't change anything. And so I still had great terms, and the downtown market was pushing us. We need this money. I had no money. They didn't know that. And 45 minutes before I had to actually sign the lease, I got the check from then Chemical Bank, and then drove so quickly down the highway, I might have broke a couple laws here speeding to give them this check. And then that was solidified, from there. Crazy.
So they're at the downtown market, and they were there for about 5 years. They were started in 2014-ish, to then were there until about 2019, and things went pretty well. They have a captive audience, but as time went on, changes at the downtown market started to kind of limit them. One is that they were growing food there, and it was becoming harder with some of the building changes. Like one specific thing that Jermale mentioned to me was that there was like this new AC system, and the food wouldn't grow the same. And then they couldn't sell certain items like salads because other vendors in the downtown market were selling them, and there was limitations on how much duplicity and things like that could be in the downtown market. Jermale ended up making the decision for moving Malamiah Juice Bar from the downtown market with the captive audience and where they had started, and they moved into what was a new area and a new kind of center of the city, which was Studio Park. And Studio Park, if you're in Grand Rapids, you know of that now, but at the time, it was a really, really new development where it had all these new apartments, a movie theater. A movie theater was even outside in this like plaza. It was really cool. It is really cool. And it's really in the heart of downtown Grand Rapids. It's right in the like dead center almost, and it's right off the freeway exit. So in terms of traffic, it was a really big bet, but you could see the logic of moving from downtown market, which has a captive audience and is proven, but to move to Studio Park, that was a risky decision because yes, on paper, right, audience should be there all the time. One big problem though, 3 months after their grand opening at Studio Park, COVID hits, and a lot of their business is based on foot traffic and based on people being in person. And when COVID hit, that essentially all went away almost overnight. So as Jermale put it when I was talking with him, is that they spent one whole day, they shut down for one day, and they ended up making all these different policies and all these different procedures so they could keep going as a business because they had full-time staff to pay and they also had their own bills to pay. And they didn't have this robust online presence at that time. So they end up, implementing all these different features and things like that, but also just helping to get, in front of new people. And also, how do you actually get people to buy juice when they're not coming in person? So they end up starting to do a lot of deliveries, and instead of doing Uber Eats or DoorDash or things like that, they were doing the deliveries themselves. Actually, Jermale was the delivery driver himself, and as Jermale put it, he learned all sorts of new neighborhoods he didn't know existed. So obviously they have bills to pay, they have their staff to pay, and they're also feeling this pressure of keeping going because they wanted to be a role model for other minority business owners that if Malamiah Juice Bar can keep going, they can keep going too. And luckily, they did end up making it out of the kind of that COVID era, and they make it out. They make it, but barely. Post-COVID, things are a little bit different because people and consumers' behaviors are a lot different post-COVID. And they end up trying to start a second location to help kind of, increase the business and just create a growth plan for Malamiah Juice Bar. But that second location didn't work out either. And at this point, right, so it's been COVID, you've had a lot of, changes with that, and you're also, started the second location. And Jermale at this point is burnt out. And Jermale mentioned specifically with me that it was too much decision. It was decision-making fatigue. To help maybe simplify their growth strategy and just maybe keep the lights on and keep going, Jermale actually makes the decision to actually shut down the Studio Park location and just turn it into more of a production center. And one of the kind of, I would say, clever ways of that they kind of simplify the business and really were right in front of the people that they wanted to hit is they actually were partnering with the YMCAs in West Michigan. And the one YMCA they were focused on was the downtown location, which was a major hub for a lot of people, especially those that might be interested in juicing. And they were able to partner with the YMCA right there and have a location right in the building. And that YMCA location was smaller than the Studio Park location, but actually would outperform their Studio Park location at times just because of the foot traffic. And it was also just, you're getting in front of the right target market in a really big way. And with that success of that YMCA location, they ended up talking to the YMCA about expanding to all the different locations in West Michigan, which is about 8 to 10 of them. And the YMCA said yes originally, but over a little bit of time ended up saying no. And that was a really big deal because that means the growth strategy was gone and completely dead for Malamiah Juice Bar. So with the growth strategy dead and, Jermale feeling burnt out and just decision fatigue, he ended up making the decision to shut down. But let me actually have Jermale explain why they ended up shutting down and what that reaction was like when the YMCA said no to their growth plan.
When they kind of, put the hammer on some things, just like, man, okay, what else can we do? We can look at this thing and twist this way and twist that way. And meanwhile, we could continue losing money while we're trying to dig out. So we can be digging deeper with the vision of that we're going to be getting out soon. And also, if I have to be transparent, the course of this entrepreneurship, I wasn't paying myself a whole lot of money. There was times where I was taking money from my family and putting it in the business or making sure the staff was paid, because they came first all the time. And that caused a little bit of conflict in my household with my spouse, and rightly so. Like, rightly so. This is not pointing fingers at all. When you're an entrepreneur, you get so tunnel vision that nobody and nothing else really matters until it matters. And there was a point where it was like, hey, what is this worth to you, your mental health? Because I was stressed. Like, I couldn't sleep. I wasn't eating that well. I'm glad we're on Zoom, because you could see that I was eating, but I wasn't eating well. I got a few extra inches here. And there was just so much mentally, emotionally, where, again, I had hit that point where I just wasn't mentally, emotionally well. I wasn't present. You mix all these things together, the result of further debt, trying to make payments on a lease and trying to make payments on loans, business loans, and trying to pay employees and all these different things, keep your customers happy, trying to get employees. And I just had to think, how am I going to move forward? And so, in all honesty, I chose me. I chose my mental, emotional well-being. I chose my physical well-being. I chose my family, because for 10 years, I chose the business.
So after 10 years in business, Jermale ends up making the decision to shut down Malamiah Juice Bar, and it was a wild ride. But one note I want to make here is it was really impressive is that they went from 0 to 250K in annual revenue in just in 2.5 years. And that's pretty darn impressive. And even though they shut down Malamiah Juice Bar, it's still a lot of experiences. It's a lot of inspiration. They taught a lot of different people. And also now Jermale can use all that experience to help other business owners grow their businesses from 0 to 250K in annual revenue and even beyond. And he's doing that now as a business coach for Spring GR in Grand Rapids, and he's feeling a lot healthier. So that's the high level story of Malamiah Juice Bar, but I want to go a little bit deeper into the growth strategies and how Malamiah Juice Bar went from 0 to 250K in annual revenue. And there's one main theme in all of this story, and that is of the concept of borrowing audiences. So this first growth strategy I want to talk about is location-based audiences. And location really matters because that's really a driver for foot traffic. So let me actually have Jermale explain the role of organic traffic and how that foot traffic is a really big deal for growth.
There was some other organic traffic that happened there, because when you're in the midst of so many other great businesses who also have wonderful products and believe in their products, you attract some of their customers too. So there's like power in numbers. And so if someone was at the time Making Time Kitchen waiting on a salad, they look behind them while they're waiting, and then they see Malamiah Juice Bar. What's this? Look at the menu. They make a purchase. Now they made a purchase from that business. They came and made a purchase from our business, and probably on the way out, they might have got a cookie, at another business on the way out.
So just by being part of Downtown Market, right, as Jermale mentioned, there's a power in numbers. And in Downtown Market, there's probably about 5 to 10 businesses. They're going to have different audiences, right? But there's overlap and there's similarities in all of that. And they're more complementary. It's how it's built. And it's a reason why if you're in the Downtown Market, you can't, maybe have salads, as Jermale mentioned, right? You're not going to have all this duplicity around it. It's going to be different items and different things to help bring in all these different audiences. And that power in numbers is what really helps drive that foot traffic and really help with the kind of organic growth from there. And as they went on and helped build Malamiah Juice Bar, that continued, right? Even when they moved from Downtown Market to Studio Park, right? You're hacking audiences by being in that specific location, right? Because you have the movie theater, you have the apartment buildings, and you have all the restaurants and all the things, even the big concert venue in the big arena that's right next door as well. So you're using all these different audiences that are kind of around you. So location, that's why location is such a big deal for retail. And for Malamiah Juice Bar, it's a big reason why they were successful, in getting that foot traffic. But they wouldn't rely on just where their physical location was. They would actually go out into neighborhoods and schools and get in front of varied audiences that might not even understand how juicing works or why it's important to eat healthy. And that leads me to the growth strategy of number 2, and this is education. And this education piece, right, if we talked about way at the beginning of this video, is Jermale has a background in education. He went to college for how to become a teacher, and he was also doing church planning, which is very similar. So this experience of helping to plant a church and also being a teacher is really helpful, right? So you can go and do these pop-ups, you can teach to different schools, and you can use that experience to help maybe you kind of build a customer base. But instead of me explaining how they would actually partner with schools, here's Jermale to explain how they actually would partner with schools and create a kind of an education, but also help kind of use that as a customer acquisition strategy.
It took us about 2 years. I don't want to say we educated everybody, right? But it took us about 2 years with that education to, I feel like, really see a return on it. I mean, well, listen, we were in schools. We had a program called the Juicy Education Program. We'd go talk to kids about fresh produce and then juices and smoothies. We'd demo that, ensure that folk had no allergies to what we were using. And we would demo it, give out samples, sometimes let a kid or two, drop a piece of fruit in the juicer. And then when we left there, we would give them wristbands. And the wristbands allowed them to come down to the juice bar and receive 50% off a product. Sometimes we would do it, hey, you come down with this, you get a free product. Now, the cool thing about that marketing was that they, if you're an elementary student or a middle school student, you couldn't get to the downtown market without your parents. So now the parents are bringing you and, they're buying something too. You know what I'm saying? So we kind of did, it was almost like getting a 2-for-1. So we educated, we have a discount program, and then we use that as marketing to also lure in the parents or guardians.
I really like how Jermale went about working with different schools for 2 main reasons. One, right, is you're getting in front of new audiences, and it's a really wide audience in schools, but you're still, getting in front of them, and it's going to maybe, bring people that wouldn't actually become, juicers or just into juice. So you're still, it's a wide audience that's going to be interesting, and just you can kind of react to see who might be in your target market in those audiences. But 2, right, is just the community impact of that, right? If you're teaching students, especially kids, here's how to actually eat healthier and why juicing might be part of that equation, that can have a really life-changing impact on families, on themselves, in ways that you can't even really measure. And I really loved kind of this dual purpose of customer acquisition, but also kind of tying into this is actually really impactful for the communities that they're in. Okay, so we've covered 2 growth strategies here. We've covered kind of this location-based audiences, and then second, we've also covered this educational piece and how Jermale is actually able to use the experiences he had before he started Malamiah Juice Bar. But the third growth strategy I want to talk about is not as big as these 2, but it still has an impact, and it might be interesting for those for some of you that might be watching this that have more of a local business. And this third growth strategy is local media. And the way Jermale did this is he would build contacts and relationships with people in the local media market. So you're not looking to get, these massive, like the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, a Time magazine. You're not trying to get any of necessarily these huge publications. You're just trying to get the local ones because they might not be huge and they might have, hundreds of thousands of views all the time, but they're extremely targeted, right? They're going to hit those local communities. And, if they're more in a local community, the probably the chances of having more of a trust and more of a building that kind of that marketing effect is higher because you're getting local, publications that, people might even know in the community. So if you have a lot of those and they're happening consistently, not only, right, you're going to build credibility because you can put those logos in your website or even show the stories, if you walk into the, the shop and you can see them printed out on the walls or whatever it might be, right? That's going to help build credibility. But also, right, marketing, you typically, to get a customer, right, you got to hit them at least 7 times, or at least they got to see, your business at least 7 times before even making a decision. And by being in local media all the time, right, you're helping to create that effect of, that 7 times of being in front of a potential customer. Again, these publications might not be very big, but they're still really targeted in hitting the right people. It's really similar to how Jermale is in the YMCA, which is going to be a smaller location, but you're hitting a higher density of the right people you want to target. So at this point in the video, I'm typically wrapping things up and telling you to like, subscribe, and check out the newsletter in the description below. And I would still appreciate if you did all those things for sure. But there's one more thing I want to do, and that's because Malamiah Juice Bar is a little bit different than what I typically do on this channel. Malamiah Juice Bar shut down, and one of the things that comes with shutting down is kind of identifying the key risks of business and why things shut down. So what I want to do is just take a moment to talk about key risk, and the key risk, particularly with Malamiah Juice Bar. And the key risk, particularly that I want to mention with Malamiah Juice Bar, is this concept of partner risk. And essentially what that is if you're too reliant on partnerships, and if you lose one, that could really mean, a huge hurt on the business or even the end of it. And for Malamiah Juice Bar, right, that main partner risk was the YMCA in this case, right? When the YMCA said, no, like, we're not going to grow with you and you're not going to be able to do all these different locations across the different locations, that completely halted all the growth strategies for Malamiah Juice Bar. Now, for Jermale, right, that might be an okay scenario, right? That's something as a founder, as a business owner, as long as you can recognize here's where this key risk is, and here's where, like, right, if this doesn't work out, if this shuts down, like, that's okay. Like, there is a world where you can have these key risks where if it completely goes away, that like that risk this happens and it doesn't go the way you wanted it, it is okay to shut down a business. It's completely okay to do that. But if you're a business and thinking through, okay, like, actually I want to keep the business going even if XYZ does happen, how do I actually manage that? And it's this concept of having a risk portfolio. So the one way I would think about it would be in terms of maybe building a content strategy, right? So for example, you might be thinking, okay, we're going to build our entire content strategy through YouTube. Great. Well, if your entire awareness and your top of your funnel and top of getting in front of an audience is through YouTube, and YouTube ends up maybe deleting your channel, or maybe their algorithm changes, or maybe the videos aren't performing as well as they used to, right? Your entire risk is based off of YouTube. But let's say you go from YouTube, and then actually now we're starting to do other platforms because YouTube's going really well, and they're still going to be secondary, right? But maybe let's say you now have a TikTok account, maybe you have an Instagram account, you now have a newsletter, right? You're diversifying how people can find you. And that's a really big deal because instead of YouTube being like your main risk, well now, right, we can kind of take that risk and cut it into a pie, right? So if like YouTube goes down, well, we're still okay because we have Instagram, we have TikTok, we have these different channels where people can find us. And the same thing goes for any type of business, right? So like your sales funnel, you can think of it as a risk portfolio in some cases and think about those different partnerships of a risk portfolio too. So in Malamiah Juice Bar's case, right? So YMCA is the partner risk, but what they could have done in one idea, right? But it also goes to like Jermale's like, mental health, physical health, right? But one thing you could do to help diversify the risk with partner risk is, maybe instead of just the YMCA, they could talk to, other gyms like Planet Fitness or, pick a gym whenever you want, right? They could talk to these different gyms in these different areas or even just similar complementary businesses and build partnerships with potentially with them as well. So there's a lot of different ways you can diversify that risk, but that's one way is to think about not only one partner, but how do you get a lot? So that way you can diversify your risk through that. So that's partner risk. If you want to learn more about Jermale Eddie, you can go to springgr.com or even email him at jermale.eddie@gmail.com. If you found this video helpful, I would love it if you can give it a like. And if you're looking for more content like this, check out the newsletter in the description below.